In early 2001, the world watched as a town in the heart of Borneo became the epicenter of a brutal and tragic conflict. This is the story of Sampit, a name that would become synonymous with one of the most severe episodes of communal violence in modern Indonesian history. To understand what happened, we need to go back decades, to a time when government policies began reshaping the demographics of Central Kalimantan. Starting in the 20th century, Indonesia's transmigration program encouraged people from densely populated islands like Madura to move to less populated regions, including Borneo, which is home to the indigenous Dayak people. The goal was to alleviate poverty and spur economic development. However, this large-scale migration created unforeseen social pressures. The Madurese migrants, known for their strong work ethic and tight-knit communities, often achieved economic success, which sometimes led to resentment from parts of the local Dayak population who felt marginalized on their own land. For years, these tensions simmered beneath the surface. There were cultural misunderstandings, economic competition over resources like land and jobs, and a growing sense of grievance. The Dayaks, with a deep spiritual connection to their ancestral lands, felt their traditions and way of life were under threat. The Madurese, for their part, were simply trying to build better lives for their families, often in challenging new environments. Small disputes would occasionally flare up, but they were usually contained. However, the underlying issues were never truly addressed. The social fabric was slowly fraying, and it was only a matter of time before a single spark would ignite a wildfire. That spark came in February 2001. The exact trigger is still debated, but it began as a localized dispute, a seemingly minor incident that quickly spiraled out of control. Rumors spread like wildfire, fueled by years of pent-up anger and mistrust. What started as a small clash between individuals rapidly escalated into organized, large-scale violence. The target was the Madurese community. The speed and ferocity of the attacks caught everyone by surprise, including local authorities. The police and military were overwhelmed, unable to contain the chaos that erupted across Sampit and its surrounding areas. The town of Sampit was transformed into a landscape of fear and destruction. Homes were burned to the ground, markets were ransacked, and public spaces that once symbolized a shared community became battlegrounds. The violence was brutal and deeply personal. Dayak warriors, invoking ancient traditions, sought to drive the Madurese out of their lands. For the Madurese residents, it was a terrifying ordeal. Thousands were forced to flee with nothing but the clothes on their backs, seeking refuge wherever they could find it. Eyewitness accounts from this period are harrowing, painting a picture of a society completely breaking down. Neighbors turned against neighbors, and the peace that had defined daily life for so long was shattered in a matter of days. As the conflict raged, the Indonesian government in Jakarta was forced to take notice. The scale of the violence was too large to ignore. The military was deployed in greater numbers to restore order, but the situation on the ground was incredibly complex and dangerous. The primary focus shifted to a massive humanitarian effort, evacuating tens of thousands of terrified Madurese civilians. They were gathered in makeshift camps and then transported by ship to other parts of Indonesia, becoming refugees in their own country. The images broadcast around the world were shocking: overcrowded ships carrying families who had lost everything, their faces etched with trauma and uncertainty. By the time a fragile peace was finally restored, the human cost was staggering. While official figures vary, it's estimated that hundreds of people lost their lives, and over 100,000 were displaced. The town of Sampit was left scarred, both physically and psychologically. The conflict didn't just destroy buildings, it destroyed trust, relationships, and the very idea of a shared future. The trauma of those weeks would linger for years, haunting survivors and shaping the collective memory of the entire region. For Indonesia, which was still navigating its new democratic era after the fall of Suharto, the Sampit conflict was a sobering wake-up call. In the aftermath, the question on everyone's mind was, how could this have happened? The Sampit conflict exposed deep-seated problems within Indonesian society. It highlighted the failures of the transmigration policy, which had prioritized economic goals without considering the social and cultural impacts. It showed how economic inequality and competition for resources could poison community relations. And perhaps most importantly, it revealed the weakness of local governance and conflict resolution mechanisms. For decades, grievances had been ignored, and there were no effective channels for dialogue or reconciliation. When tensions finally boiled over, there was nothing to stop the descent into violence. The years following the conflict were dedicated to a slow and painful process of healing. Government agencies and non-governmental organizations initiated reconciliation programs aimed at rebuilding trust between the Dayak and Madurazi communities. These efforts focused on intercommunity dialogue, promoting cultural understanding, and addressing some of the economic disparities that had fueled the conflict. The goal was to create a new social contract, one based on mutual respect and shared governance. It was a monumental task. For those who had lost family members or their entire livelihoods, forgiveness was not easy. For the displaced Madarese, the question of whether they could ever safely return was a difficult one. Some Madarese families did eventually return to Sampit, but the community was never the same. The process of rebuilding was not just about constructing new houses, but about reconstructing a society. New agreements were forged, often based on a better understanding of each other's cultures and a commitment to resolving disputes peacefully. Security was strengthened, and local governments became more proactive in monitoring and mediating social tensions. The lessons learned from Sampit were applied in other parts of Indonesia to prevent similar tragedies from occurring. The conflict served as a stark reminder that national unity cannot be taken for granted. It must be actively nurtured and protected at the local level. Today, Sampit is a very different place. The town has been rebuilt, and a sense of normalcy has returned. Economic activity has resumed, and people from different backgrounds once again live and work alongside each other. However, the memory of 2001 has not faded. It serves as a permanent reminder of the fragility of peace and the devastating consequences of unresolved social conflict. The story of Sampit is a powerful lesson for the world. It teaches us that migration, identity, and economic justice are complex issues that must be managed with care and empathy. It shows us that when historical grievances are left to fester, they can erupt with terrifying force. But it also offers a glimmer of hope that even after the darkest of times, communities can find a path towards healing, reconciliation, and a more peaceful future.